Hello there, welcome to Nerd.World. In today's episode, I am looking at the Klingon Bird of Prey, as featured originally in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. It's one of my favourite vessels in the Star Trek franchise. It's one of the most iconic vessels of the Klingon Empire, and probably one of the most iconic sci-fi ships in sci-fi ever. It's definitely up there with the Enterprise and Imperial Star Destroyer and Millennium Falcon, Serenity. But before we get started, if you like this video, if you like this channel, please consider subscribing and commenting down below, as well as, shameless plug, I have two other channels, Nerd.World Films, very similar to this one, but it's about movies and movie related stuff. I'm planning some expansions on that channel soon as well to expand the content a little bit, and Nerd.World History that's more factually based. Both are linked in the description below if you'd like to check them out. With that said, let's get started. The Klingon Bird of Prey. As said, the Klingon Bird of Prey first appeared in the movie Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, under the command of a renegade Klingon captain, Captain Krug, who was a little more than a pirate. Now, in the original story, the vessel was actually going to be a Romulan ship, but due to behind-the-scenes stuff where they had lots of Klingon uniforms and stuff left over, they decided to go with Klingons instead, but by that point they'd already built the model. It's why the ship has feathering and a general bird motif, which is more associated with the Romulans. Other stories that were abandoned about the Bird of Prey also included the fact that Krug had stolen it or somehow acquired it from the Romulans, either killing its original crew or getting the vessel in some other third-party means. All those stories were abandoned and the vessel was simply made a Klingon ship, as it was superfluous to the storyline. And the Romulans have plenty of cool ships of their own. Let's give the Klingons the Bird of Prey, because all they had before that really was the D7 and Katinga class vessels. Now, obviously that story has since been retconned completely out of canon, any possibility of canon, with the series of Enterprise, with the Klingons having a precursor of the Burrell class Bird of Prey, a much older vessel which was more heavily armed actually, and a bit more ubiquitous with their fleet. But it has shown up in most forms of canon. The Bird of Prey, the Burrell class, is about 35 meters in length in general. They have a maximum warp of warp 8, and they only have 3 weapons. 1 forward-facing torpedo launcher, 2 forward-facing heavy disruptor cannons which fire pulse form. The wings are some of its most iconic features, with when they are in an up position it is for landing, to allow the landing gear to extend, and the ramps and other such things to extend so they don't just use transporters to get in and out, or a ladder or anything. In a completely horizontal position they are for flight mode. This is partly for aerodynamics when in an atmosphere, but also something about technobabble expanding the warp field or something when it's at warp. When they're in a down position, this means they're in a fighting mood, which you imagine they'd be in that mood most of the time. The vessel, though, is capable of going to full impulse or warp with its wings in any of these positions. The ship has no aft weapons as standard, as Klingons don't like it. You don't want to show your back to the enemy. They're not supposed to be running away, they're supposed to be attacking. Plus the relative small size of the vessel, it would just absorb power that the ship needs for its shields and its main weapons. And its most advanced feature, a technology the Klingons did actually get from the Romulans, the cloaking device, which renders the ship invisible to the eye when close up, as well as from most forms of sensor detection, unless you know exactly what you're looking for. Other than that, the vessel has shown up in other media as well. It's not other media, in other series. It's obviously shown up in The Next Generation and in Deep Space Nine, although to my knowledge I don't remember it ever showing up in Voyager. The Bird of Prey has obviously a variation of it, has shown up in Discovery, and it's got multiple different classes showing up in different films and other things. You've got the much larger Covert class Bird of Prey, which is almost equal in size, at least, to a Galaxy class starship, but seems to share the basic hull design of the much smaller Burrell class, with no canonical additional weapons. In other words, it's still got its 1 forward torpedo launcher and 2 forward disruptors, although of course these are massively upscaled, as are the thickness of the hull, strength of the shields, and the vessel's speed. There's also the D-12 class bird of prey, which was responsible for taking down the Enterprise D. This vessel had a notable fault in its power relays and other systems that was exploited to force the vessel to cloak when it didn't want to. This ship's class was discontinued from the line, but again shared the same basic hull profile. It's only the ones from the 22nd century which had as an additional dual disruptor cannon mounted on the ship's belly, as well as having aft weapons. Now there are variants of this ship, of course, that do have additional armaments, such as aft weapons or additional disruptors or types of torpedo that they might carry. But as standard in its stock form, no. Just the two disruptors and one the torpedo launcher, cloaking device, shields. The vessels are never shown to use replicators, although Klingons are known to have replicator technology. Klingons prefer their food live, so if the ships have replicators, they're usually only for engineering purposes or replication of supplies or uniforms or additional weapons. These ships, as a result, carry like live targ pits and actual kitchens for butchery and preparation of live food, such as gach, the single most disgusting food ever created in any sci-fi franchise. It's not eating bugs, it's some kind of wriggly worm. It looks like a tapeworm. It's disgusting. Klingons, they love it. Get those guys some chocolate, Despite its small size, the vessel is highly sought after by Klingon commanders. A good example is General Martok in Deep Space Nine, using a Burrell-class bird of prey of all craft, which are considered by most by the Federation to be little more than a scout vessel. He used it to great effect against the Dominion forces throughout the entire war. The vessel actually outlasted the USS Defiant. As a result, because they are extremely flexible, because they are very stealthy, because they're actually quite robust for a vessel of their size, they are heavily sought after by Klingon commanders. They're somehow seen as more honourable. So as you can tell, the bird of prey is an enduring design of the Klingon Empire. Exactly when they first came into commission isn't known, but they're definitely an older design, but they're an effective one. As I said, they're still very much sought after and are still very effective in modern warfare for the Klingon Empire, and feared by their enemies. It also should be noted that these vessels do also appear in the Mirror Universe, as encountered again when Dr. Bashir, Captain Sisko and others journeyed into that universe and would encounter them. These birds of prey, though in the Mirror Universe, lacked the tactical advantage of the cloaking device, but otherwise they seem to be pretty much the same vessel. There doesn't seem to be any, at least no noticeable differences between the two ships, although there isn't a great exploration of them in the Mirror Universe. The only thing we do learn is that they lack a cloaking device, but otherwise they seem to be pretty much identical as their Prime Universe counterparts. Although the Klingon culture of that universe is far less honourable than its Prime Universe version. And there we have most of the story of the Bird of Prey. A fantastic vessel, versions of a Bird of Prey, though, as it is a very impressive design and very envied. Birds of Prey type ships have been used by other factions in the Star Trek universe, though. There, of course, is the Romulan Bird of Prey that now with the retconning you could argue is a Romulan attempt to copy the Klingon Bird of Prey, or maybe there's an even older historical connection between the Romulans and the Klingons sharing designs. There is also, although this is now non-canon, but it was originally going to be canon, that the Romulan Bird of Prey was actually based off of Federation technology and therefore off of a Starfleet vessel, with a deleted scene from the original series in Balance of Terror where Spock identifies the Romulan vessel as being constructed with Federation designs, or based on Federation design. I can't quite remember exactly what he said. That, of course, is now non-canon. There is also a non-canon version of the Romulan Bird of Prey built by Starfleet, which I cannot remember what the class of the ship was called, but there is a Starfleet version of a Romulan Bird of Prey from the 23rd century. And it's got the basic same hull design and hull profile, but I'm not sure if that vessel was meant to be the one the Romulans stole the design of and built their own version, or if Starfleet thought, quite like that, we'll build our own. But in the story of its non-canon existence, it was a prototype that Starfleet didn't bother building more of, despite the fact it was actually quite successful a design. But it was a pure warship, and Starfleet's always been against the idea of warship designs, so But anyway, that's non-canon sources, and that was Romulan, not Klingon. But the bird of prey in general is, and some could argue that the very development of the Defiant class by the Federation was an idea basically on the Klingons. The Klingons prefer large numbers of small vessels like birds of prey. It's only the Romulans that tend to build big, hulking battle cruisers like the Warbirds. Starfleet clearly, in most opinion, would have looked more to the Klingons for this smaller, although much better built, but more mass-producible small ship rather than larger starships. Although Starfleet would go on to build things like the Sovereign class, the bird of prey would have been some kind of influence on the Defiant class. Small, nasty little ship with a punch to it. The vessels are a beautiful design overall, very elegant, which is almost non-Klingon about them. Although they look very Klingon on the inside, they're quite Spartan. The Klingons don't have decoration. There's no sense of aesthetic. You could barely even call them painted. They're all just metal bulks, metal floor, metal ceiling, basic lighting, not very comfortable looking controls and chairs, and metal beds. Very austere, very Klingon, but a very elegant and beautifully designed vessel, which has served the Klingon Empire well for centuries, and may it go on to do so for centuries more. Now, I hope you liked that video. That's what we have in the Klingon bird of prey, and it's, as I say, various different classifications and sizes, which the Cavort class, by the way, never really made much sense to me. It's too big. Imagine how powerful those disruptors would be. Those disruptors on that ship, just upscaled. If you look at the size of the disruptors on the smaller Brel class, bear in mind, there's only 30 odd meters in length. So, or at least it was an original cannon. Has that been retconned? Either way, those cannons would be huge because they make up like a third of the length of the ship. So already those guns are gigantic on a small vessel. The larger ship, the Cavort class, is like 600 meters. You upscale that, those guns must be as big as the nacelles of the original Enterprise or something. Those they shatter a moon or something. Anyway, going off tangent. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the Klingon bird of prey. Do you like other Klingon vessels better? Do you not like Klingon designs? I personally love Klingon designs. I think they're fantastic looking. There's so much lore and richness behind them. Like, share, subscribe, comment down below. And bye-bye until the next video.